Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will give folks one more minute to join and settle in before we get started. For folks that are joining us, thank you so much for taking the time to join our webinar. We're going to give it one more minute or so before we get started. You've joined us for the Leveraging Federal Climate Investments in Providence webinar. You are in the right place. We're just giving folks another minute or two tops to get settled. We will begin by 6:04. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for the Leveraging Federal Climate Investments in Providence webinar. We appreciate your time, especially during a warm, sunny afternoon, evening in Providence. My name is Priscilla de la Cruz. I am the Director of Sustainability for the City of Providence. It is my pleasure to join you today. To start, just to set the intention for why we're here today, for this webinar, we have planned about 45 minutes where you'll learn about the historic federal climate law. That is the Inflation Reduction Act, also known for sure as the IRA. This law was signed in this Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law by President Biden in 2022, and it includes a provision called direct pay, which direct pay allows tax-exempt entities like school districts and local governments like Providence to access federal funding for clean energy upgrades that make indoor air quality healthier, curb energy costs for buildings, and can create high-quality jobs to get the work done. And Providence, I am pleased to say, is primed and ready for direct pay to help us embrace clean energy for our public buildings and to do it with family sustaining and community-centered jobs. A simple way to put that, we know what the Inflation Reduction Act, especially the direct pay means for us as a community, and we want you to know what it means for you and what it can do for you. You'll also learn throughout this webinar how, as a Providence resident or business, you can access other state programs to help you maximize energy savings by reducing energy costs through energy efficiency and clean energy technologies, such as heat pumps and solar, and that is while contributing to Providence's ambitious climate goals and furthering our shared vision of a healthier and more resilient City of Providence. So before I go ahead and introduce our esteemed panel of speakers, just a few housekeeping items. The presentations during this webinar are being recorded because we want to share this information widely, and we know we're going to share a lot with you today. So we want you to receive, as a follow-up, the recording to this webinar. The speaking and the presentations of this webinar, as I mentioned, will take about 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A discussion among our panelists for the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. You can use the Q&A section in Zoom to type in your questions along the way. And now we're going to begin with opening remarks from my boss, our Honorable Mayor Brett Smiley. The mayor has recorded a brief video remarks. Unfortunately, he is unable to join us this evening virtually live due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts. So now I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our host, Climate Jobs Rhode Island, to go ahead and cue up that video from Mayor Brett Smiley.
Thank you for joining me today alongside the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources and Climate Jobs Rhode Island to discuss financing opportunities for clean energy and energy efficiency in our community. Like many coastal cities, Providence faces significant impacts from climate change. In response, we've launched several initiatives to build a more climate-resilient city, including major investments in green infrastructure to improve stormwater management and mitigate flooding. The increase in extreme weather events have tangibly impacted the quality of life of our neighbors and local businesses. Recognizing this, we have strategically invested in green infrastructure to improve the city's resiliency. Since the start of my administration, we've invested in improving stormwater management, maintaining our hurricane barrier, and encouraging natural flood mitigation techniques. We've utilized city budget, ARPA funds, and capital improvement dollars to update our stormwater infrastructure citywide. We are currently developing and implementing a citywide resiliency hub network, which aims to reshape our city's response to these pressing challenges. These hubs can be integrated into existing buildings like our libraries and recreation centers and offer access to emergency resources, training, healthcare resources, childcare, and even food distribution. But beyond these daily services, our hubs will act as our city's safeguard against unpredictable events, be it heat waves, blizzards, or floods. This year, we also signed the Energy Efficiency and Carbon Neutral Goals for Municipal Buildings Ordinance, demonstrating our commitment to a healthier environment. Providence is prioritizing efforts to combat climate change with electric school buses, sustainable stormwater management practices, and green infrastructure investments. We're also preparing our workforce for green economy jobs. Our path towards sustainability is guided by the Climate Justice Plan, aiming for carbon neutrality in city-owned buildings by 2040 and citywide in 2050. This plan involves significant changes in governance, economic systems, and community health to ensure a just transition away from fossil fuels. Providence aims to be the first climate job city in America, reducing our carbon footprint, creating jobs, and strengthening our economy. Together, we are shaping a future where sustainability and prosperity go hand in hand, leading the way towards a greener, more prosperous community for generations to come. Today, you will learn more about the opportunities available to you as we pave our way towards a more sustainable future. Thank you for your help and support.
Thank you to the mayor for his brief remarks. It was his vision that brought us all together. He wants to make sure that you all as a community know the endless amount of federal funding opportunities out there for residents, nonprofits, and also, of course, what we're doing here in Providence to tap into those resources. So as you heard from the mayor, we are working to fully integrate our city into the green economy. We are not only committed to leading by example, that is by reducing our carbon footprint in city-owned buildings in order to do our part in combating the climate change crisis and building a stronger, greener economy. We are also enabling Providence residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that serve our community to access similar historic federal investments in clean energy, which is why we're here today. Through Providence Energy Efficiency and Carbon Neutral Goals for Municipal Buildings Ordinance, as the mayor mentioned, that ordinance requires fossil fuels to be phased out from our city-owned buildings by 2040. So Providence is creating a model for cities across the country seeking to maximize the high-quality job creation, equity, and climate impacts investments under the federal climate bill. So we want to be the city that is leading the charge and working across other municipalities, but also across the nation to really tap into the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act as we're working to meet our carbon neutral goals and really centering high quality jobs and also centering equity and justice as we're doing that. So now, how are we backing up and implementing Providence commitment to achieving carbon neutrality in all our city-owned buildings by 2040? The city has already secured federal funding, including over $10 million through the U.S. Treasury's Capital Fund to retrofit recreation and community facilities. We've also secured $1.2 million through an energy building fund financing option that's offered through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and through the Office of Energy Resources. And you'll learn more about the Office of Energy Resources throughout this webinar. Additionally, the state already reimburses municipalities like Providence 80 to 90% for school construction projects and major renovations, enabling the city to build or completely renovate 3 to 4 school buildings each year. So when we layer up the opportunities that are being offered through the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, we are further advancing the work that we're doing in our city-owned buildings, including our schools and our community centers. Other projects in the city's decarbonization queue include 6 recreation centers that have already received energy audits and electrification studies as part of Mayor Smiley's commitment to creating resiliency hubs throughout the city, as he mentioned during his video remarks. And there is a new Department of Public Works facility that is in the design phase that will comply with this ordinance and also maximize the benefits offered by the Inflation Reduction Act. And in particular, you'll learn about direct pay and how we also plan to tap into that resource. Lastly, as you heard from the mayor, we are incredibly proud that Providence has pledged to become the first climate job city in America. What this means, we are preparing our workforce here to also succeed in this transition towards a sustainable green economy. By working with our allies in the labor and climate movements like Climate Jobs Rhode Island, we're able to pair commitments to clean energy, building upgrades with strong labor standards. And we're showing that climate and jobs are a winning combination and that we can make a difference at the local level to expand these pathways to union careers in clean energy and also where they are needed the most in our frontline communities. Now, it is my pleasure to hand over the virtual stage to Mike Rolls. Mike Rolls is the Executive Director of Climate Jobs Rhode Island. He is going to talk about the direct pay mechanism under the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA. Climate Jobs Rhode Island is such an incredible partner to the City of Providence. They are working with us hand in hand as we strive to meet our carbon neutrality goals and to become the first climate job city in America. So Climate Jobs Rhode Island is a broad coalition and growing coalition of labor, environmental, and community partners committed to a just transition to an equitable, pro-worker, and pro-climate green economy. Mike, over to you.
Well, thank you, Priscilla. And I just want to give a quick thank you to the mayor and the City of Providence. The City of Providence, just real quick, is on both on the mayor's office and also through the City Council, is really paving the way on how to be true leaders and show true leadership for the nation on how to show a just transition and how to make sure that we're getting to our clean energy goals on time and on target to the way that science demands, but also doing it in a way where we're increasing access to family sustaining careers and doing it equitably and increasing opportunity across the board. So thank you again to the mayor and to the city. And we're very much looking forward to continuing this partnership. I'm going to ask Erica to share the slide deck. Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Great. So I'm going to try to get through as much as I can within my allotted time here. The Inflation Reduction Act is a game changer. It is, and I'll explain why in a second, or through this presentation, I'll share why. And because it's such a game changer, it's very complex. And I'll start by saying I am not a lawyer. And this presentation is not a substitute for legal or tax advice. I strongly recommend for anyone who's interested in taking advantage of direct pay to refer to Treasury or IRS guidance on this topic, and even potentially retain a tax lawyer if you're planning to claim the direct pay program. Let's go to the next slide, Erica. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the direct pay mechanism. It's the IRS refers to its legal term that they've named it, known as elective pay. They are the same exact thing. When you see elective pay written somewhere, know that it's direct pay and vice versa. I'll talk a little bit about the process that IRS has rolled out for claiming the credits utilizing direct pay. And I'm also going to share a little bit of information on, it's known as Section 179D. It's not eligible for direct pay, but there are considerations that public entities and non-taxable entities, nonprofits, school districts, tribal governments might want to consider when doing energy efficiency retrofits, and how they can maximize those benefits through the deduction that the designer would get for those facilities. Erica, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So real quick, direct pay is an expansion of clean energy tax credits that have normally been reserved for for-profit entities. It's been in the form of a tax credit because they're tax paying entities. They claim the credit when they file their taxes. This is a new paradigm. This is a new mechanism that allows tax exempt entities to access these tax credits as cash payments. So when the project is in service, you claim the credit, you get a check from the government, and it can really bring down the cost of the project in the end. Tax exempt entities that are eligible for this include nonprofits, state governments, local governments, so towns and cities, and also other subdivisions and agencies and instrumentalities of local and state governments, including school districts. It's non-competitive, so you're not filing a grant application, which is a new thought for people who are coming in the nonprofit world. It's uncapped. There's no cap on this tax credit, and the tax credit is available all the way to 2032. Let's go to the next slide. This is a quick list of all of the of most of the tax credits that are available, that are eligible for direct pay. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to give a couple examples through this list that folks might be most interested in. Let's go to the next slide. And the first one I'll show is the investment tax credit and how this works and the process for claiming it. The projects that you might want to look into doing and claiming the investment tax credit with the direct pay mechanism include projects like solar, geothermal energy storage. If you're doing a microgrid, you can cover the cost for the controllers that you need to control the microgrid, combined heat and power, all in the form of cash payments from the IRS. And when your project is finished, those credits can cover somewhere between 30 to 50% of the project costs, depending on the conditions, which I'll share in a second. I did include the caveat with the low-income communities bonus credit. I'm not going to go into details on this one. It is where a bonus credit that you do have to file an application. And I'm just flagging that the deadline for the initial deadline is June 27th. If you miss the deadline, it's a rolling basis. But we can share more information after this presentation on the low-income communities bonus credit program. So these are the bonuses that you can get through the investment tax credit. If your project is more than 1 megawatt, you can get 30% covered if you're applying labor standards. That includes paying your workers prevailing wage and using apprentices. Rhode Island has great apprenticeships that you can turn to. There's a pre-apprenticeship program in Rhode Island as well. I encourage folks that are doing projects to turn to those folks. So when you use labor standards in your project that is more than 1 megawatt, you get 30% for using labor standards. You get an added 10% if you're using USA made materials. So USA made steel, there's an entire section in the IRS regulations that demonstrate which domestic content applies with the bonus. And then there's an added energy community bonus. And that is an energy community defined by the federal government is an area that has been dependent on fossil fuel production or distribution. There is a section as well for projects that are smaller than 1 megawatt, where you can get a few of those bonuses as well. Let's go to the next slide. So for example, a city installs a 1.25 megawatt solar power system that costs $3 million on one of its properties. So the city fronts that $3 million total first, from beginning to end, construction to actually putting it into service or turning it on, basically. As soon as they complete the project, then they go to the IRS pre-filing registration portal. Then they get a registration number. They file, it's called Form 990T. That's for public entities for the investment tax credit. And then within less than a year of filing those taxes, they will receive a cash payment of about 40% if they're doing the domestic content and the prevailing wage and apprenticeship utilization. That's cutting $1.2 million of the total cost off the entire project. They do again, they have to front the cost at the beginning, but they will get $1.2 million back, and that project will pay itself over time. And we turn to our national partners who do some data crunching on energy and cost savings data. They looked at Providence's public safety complex, which is a facility that consumes a lot of energy. It's open day and night. It uses a lot of technology. They found that if they did a solar plus battery storage that makes up for the entire energy use in that building, the project would likely pay for itself within about 8.5 years. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk quickly about another tax credit that's eligible for direct pay. It's for electric vehicles. If you're a public entity or a nonprofit entity that has a gas-powered vehicle fleet, you can file to cover up to 30% of the commercial vehicle cost. If it's for smaller vehicles, that's capped at the total $7,500 for small vehicles. And for large vehicles like school buses, it's capped at $40,000. And you can also get a credit for EV charging infrastructure. That covers 30% of the cost for the charging infrastructure project, but it's capped at $100,000. There's also a requirement for the EV charging infrastructure credit where it has to be located in a low-income community, which is in the definitions in the IRS guidance. So the timeline and process for claiming these credits. So it's somewhat complicated to claim direct pay for entities that are not used to filing taxes. So eligible entities claiming direct pay are required to and we're going to send all of this information and these links in the follow-up after this presentation. Luckily, everyone who's registered, we have your email addresses, so look for it there. But eligible entities that are claiming direct pay are required to pre-register their projects through the IRS web portal after the project is put into service. So you pay for the project is completed, it's turned on, it's working. Then you want to pre-register that project through the IRS web portal. And then after pre-registering, the IRS sends you, you want to submit detailed info about the project. There's a lot of details that you have to go into, especially if you're doing the domestic content bonus. You have to file all of the records that show that you've complied with, the labor standards, that you've complied with the domestic content bonuses. And then what happens is after you fill out that information in the registration portal, you get back a registration number from the IRS. And you have to do this for each project that you have. That registration number is important because that's the number that's going to go on your filed tax return when you fill it out. You have to figure out which tax return to file and when it's due. Again, it's probably an unfamiliar process for most non-taxable entities. There's a steep learning curve for a lot of entities that have, not had to file taxes in the past. There's work being done by other service organizations to help entities understand what they have to do and what their obligations are, so that they are, doing it all, in compliance with Treasury rules. And then you file your tax return. The IRS says that for most tax exempt and government entities, including tribal governments, that deadline is generally the 15th day of the 5th month after the end of the entity's tax year. So if the calendar year is the end of your tax year, that would be May 15th. If your calendar year is June 30th, that would be November 15th. So that's stuff to keep in mind. They also encourage entities to do the pre-registration about 120 days before you file your taxes, so that you do make sure you get all the paperwork. But generally, these are the steps that an entity needs to take. You identify and pursue the qualifying project or activity. You determine your tax year. You satisfy all of the eligibility requirements for the tax credit and any applicable bonus credits, if applicable, for the given tax year. You complete your pre-filing registration with the IRS. You file the required annual tax return by the due date, and you make a valid elective payment election. And then within, I've seen, don't quote me on this, but I have seen estimations that within 3 months that the direct payment should come, sometimes less than that. Again, this is all new. We're learning as we go, and I think the IRS is as well. But this graphic at the bottom of the slide here, this sample timeline, I pulled it right from the White House's website. And that's the example that the White House gives in terms of an example of when the entity is putting the project into service all the way to when they receive the direct payment, kind of the steps that happen in between those two milestones. I'll go to the next slide. So there is a trick to financing these projects at the front end, as folks realize probably. And there is a time lag from project development to receiving the direct payment tax refund for projects. So there is a requirement that you are going to need to figure out bridge financing, whether that is a city that's going to take it from their annual budget, or whether that is through if you're a government entity, a public entity, the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is a very valuable resource on this front. They can help provide some of those bridge financing opportunities. There's other financing tools like forgivable loans up to 100% of the project costs that exist out there. There's different credit stacking tricks as well. And just know that the IRS has been very generous here, that they're allowing direct pay, the ones that are claiming direct pay, to combine direct payments for the credits with tax exempt grants for forgivable loans. They will use that as part of their calculation for giving you the total eligible amount back in your direct payment. The one caveat is tax exempt bonds, which if you're using tax exempt bonds in your stack, it may result in a reduction of the underlying credit. Again, that's all laid out in the IRS rules. I highly recommend, if you're going to do that, you get a tax lawyer. Let's go to the next slide. Here are just some general resources. I borrowed this from our friends on the Center for Budget and Tax Policy. It was very helpful for me. These are great links here. You'll see the direct pay regulations, the FAQs on the IRS direct pay stuff. That FAQ page on the IRS has been a Bible for me. You've got the pre-registration portal. And then the Lawyers for Good Government, that organization has a plethora of very, very helpful resources. They really bring it down to the granular level, but in a way that is very understandable. And also Climate Jobs Rhode Island has a few in-house resources that we'll share after this presentation as well. I'll jump to the quick section 179D before I wrap up. So unlike the tax credits that I spoke about before, if you're doing a project that has to do with energy efficiency and building retrofits, for example, you're updating the interior lighting, you're doing HVAC work, you're doing water heaters, building envelope work, that work is not eligible for direct pay. However, there is this section 179D, which is very helpful because it does cut into the cost of the project majorly. I have the math laid out here. I'm not going to go into the details but what I will say is that while it's not eligible for direct pay, you can receive the deduction as a discount on the project cost from the primary designer. So it would have to be the primary designer that claims the Section 179D credit. And there is an opportunity in the IRS guidance that allows that. It just requires an allocation letter between the designer and the tax exempt entity that wants those savings. And that is submitted as part of the paperwork that the designer submits. We have a resource guide that lays this out. We have point-by-point details on what you want to include in that allocation letter. As we know, the best way to reduce your carbon footprint is through energy efficiency. This is one of the most important pieces on saving dollars for buildings that need to be updated. And this is really a real payback in the shortest amount of time. So just in conclusion, we'll go to the next slide real quick. I just wanted to say that these clean energy investments are paired with important incentives that expand equitable pathways to family sustaining careers. If we get this right, they can lead to pathways out of poverty for many. And this is really our best shot to realize a just transition to a clean energy economy that I think a lot of us, all of us really share that value and really simultaneously tackle the twin crises of climate change and inequality. If we go to the next slide, that's just my email address if anyone has follow-up questions. But in the meantime, we'll hopefully have some time for questions at the end of the whole presentation today. But I'll kick it back to Priscilla, who will bring on our next panelist, who I'm excited about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. That is a wealth of information there. And like Mike said, we will make sure we share these resources with you. Since you've registered for the webinar, you will receive not only the recording of this webinar, so you can replay Mike's presentation and review all those resources that Mike shared, but also we can link to other information that will be useful to you. So like Mike, I am very excited to introduce our next speaker. That is Karen Bradbury. Karen serves as the Administrator of Energy Legislation and Programs at the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources. The Office of Energy Resources is also referred to as OER, and OER is another key partner of the city. So we are excited for you to learn more about OER and their programs. So Karen, over to you.
Great, sorry. Thank you so much, Priscilla, and thank you to Mayor Smiley and the City of Providence for hosting this webinar. Erica, could you share my slides, please? Great, thank you. I also want to give a shout out to Mike Rolls and the Climate Jobs Rhode Island team for pushing out information about direct pay. It's very important information, and I am not going to repeat what Mike talked about with direct pay. Rather, I'm going to give you an overview of the Office of Energy Resources, or OER, and highlight a couple of exciting initiatives. So what is the Office of Energy Resources? Let's start with what we don't do. We are not the place to call when you have a power outage or you're behind on a bill. For these issues, you would call the local utility, which for most people would be Rhode Island Energy, and that's where we get the confusion. Instead, OER develops and manages programs that respond to the state's long-term energy needs. We do this by focusing on environmental sustainability, energy security, and the growth of clean energy jobs. As part of our work, we also collaborate with public and private stakeholders and interest groups to hear their suggestions and concerns before we recommend new policies. Erica, slide, please. Thank you. All of our work follows these guiding principles. We work to shift our state's energy portfolio to technologies that have low to no emissions. We want to keep rates low enough now and in the future. We want to make sure we have energy flow that's consistent and diverse enough so we don't run out of energy during peak events when demand spikes, such as last week's heat wave. And we want to ensure that benefits are enjoyed by all Rhode Islanders. Slide, please. All the work we do is leading us to a clean energy future, but it's a lot of information that's available. It can be overwhelming for homeowners, for small businesses, for nonprofits, and it makes it difficult to know how to begin greening your home or place of work. And with the infrastructure bill, federal infrastructure bill, and in the Inflation Reduction Act, it's only, even though they're historic investments in clean energy, it is adding to the wealth of knowledge out there and makes it even more overwhelming. So before we can go 100% renewable, we need to prepare our energy system first. You heard Mike talk about energy efficiency, and that's where everyone should start. Lower your energy use before you add generation. The American Council for an Energy Efficiency Economy consistently ranks Rhode Island in the top 10 in the country for our energy efficiency programs. And the last ranking that was released was at the end was for 2022, and Rhode Island was 7th in the nation. Now, our energy efficiency programs are not run by the Office of Energy Resources. They are administered by Rhode Island Energy, and they're the programs that you've heard of, weatherization, insulation, upgrades to heating and cooling systems, LED bulbs, and the like. So after energy efficiency, we're going to focus on electrification, which means we convert our cars, our homes and buildings from gas and oil to electric power. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of the exciting programs that we have to help you do this. Then we're going to build up our clean energy capacity with solar, onshore and offshore wind. Everyone knows that Rhode Island led the way for the nation with the Block Island Wind Farm. And also anaerobic digestion in geothermal systems, which we're starting to hear more about. These are the steps that can be carried out in order for homes and businesses to decarbonize in the most effective manner. And while it's the preferred order, it isn't set in stone that you need to follow each of these steps one after the other. You can do all three at the same time, but we just see this as the preferred order. So then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about programs that can help you with this clean energy transition. Next slide. Thank you. One of our big programs that launched in September of 2023 is Clean Heat RI. This is the state's heat pump incentive program. It was funded with $25 million from the General Assembly, American Rescue Plan, or COVID stimulus funding. And we oversee the program, but we do have a program implementer, Abode Energy Management, that handles the website, all applications, customer questions, and our approved contractor network. You'll see at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to the Clean Heat RI website. We have 3 types of incentives. Oh, can you just go back for 1 second, please, Erica? Oh, thanks. We have the residential incentives. They are available to those currently heating with natural gas, oil, and propane. Electric heat and/or hot water customers aren't eligible for Clean Heat RI. You would have to contact your local electric utility to discuss any incentive programs that they may have. You can see on the chart, we have incentivized equipment on the left, existing dwelling incentives, and then new construction on the right, existing dwelling in the middle. You don't have to remove your existing system. If you install heat pumps, you can keep it as a backup. Most people keep their system, and the program requires a formal certification that the heat pump will be the primary source of heat. Next slide. Our next incentive is an income eligible incentive. This program pays for 100% of the project costs and up to $3,000 for electric or piano upgrades. Natural gas customers, you'll notice on this chart, are excluded right now. We want to make sure that the transfer is affordable for all. And we also see that converting from oil or propane results in the biggest decrease of carbon emissions. So if you heat with natural gas and you're an income eligible customer, you should contact Rhode Island Energy's Low Income Services. And you'll Clear Result, which is their vendor, will provide a free energy assessment for you. And I can provide that information to the organizers of this webinar. And when they send out the recording, you can have that information. Again, you don't have to remove your existing system. You can keep it as a backup as long as the heat pump will be the primary source of heat. Next slide. We also have a small business nonprofit incentive. This is available to small businesses with revenue that's not greater than $30 million annually. It's available to all registered 501c3s of any size. Unfortunately, municipal and government buildings are not eligible for this incentive. So if you want to learn more, you can go to cleanheatri.com. There is general information on the program. And if you're ready to install, you can select your language at the top left of the page. You select, I am a homeowner, installer, organization. You can look up an installer from a verified contractor list. We recommend that you try to get 3 quotes. It'll help get the best price for your project. You can upload the quotes to the Clean Heat website, the comparison tool. They'll review your options and get back to you with an analysis of what they see as the best price and project for your home. And then you work with your installer to apply to the program. And after the installation, you submit the documents through the application portal and you'll receive your rebate payment. I will say from personal experience, my family went through this program several months ago, and it was very efficient. And we had very pleasant interactions with everyone involved. Next slide, please. So as Priscilla mentioned earlier, I want to talk about another exciting program from the Inflation Reduction Act, which Priscilla mentioned earlier. In 2022, August 16th, 2022, President Biden signed the landmark Inflation Reduction Act. And this law includes $8.8 billion in rebates nationally for home energy and electrification projects. So there are 2 home energy rebate programs. Rhode Island is going to receive approximately $64 million, split about evenly between the 2 programs. You'll see that the home electrification and appliance rebate program here is focused on electrification and appliance upgrades. The HER program, the home efficiency rebate program, is going to provide rebates to customers undergoing a home energy improvement that is modeled to reduce their energy use by a minimum of 20%. OER has filed its HERE program application with the U.S. Department of Energy, and we're working through the final review and approval process, but I'll let you know a few key points of our program proposal. We're going to partner with the Rhode Island Department of Human Services and the state's community action agencies, or CAPS, to deliver the benefits to low and moderate income households. This will be like a one-stop shop for recipients who are already receiving existing programming benefits from the CAPS. And that way, we see it as a reduction of the number of disruptions to households. There's so much out there right now, and you don't want to just be always going to the same households with, we have this new program, here's some more information for you. So we're going to work with the CAPS, and they have people who go out to homes already. So when they're visiting a household, they're going to be able to offer additional upgrades from the electrification and appliance rebate program, including electric panel upgrades, wiring improvements, Energy Star certified electric stove or cooktop, Energy Star certified heat pump clothes dryer. And we will get information from the CAPS that'll qualify residents for these new upgrades. This information can be found on our website. There's a link on the slide. Our entire proposal that was presented at a public hearing is on that website, and we do update the website as we move forward in the application process with the Department of Energy. Moderate incomes not served by the CAPS will also be eligible to apply for the rebates. Next slide, please. So we also have many solar and energy programs here in Rhode Island, including net metering, which requires electric distribution companies to credit power produced by renewable energy systems that's located on site at your, the residence. Virtual net metering allows customers to connect their electric load regardless of whether the renewable system is located on the property. We work with Commerce RI's Renewable Energy Fund, which provides grants for renewable energy projects in small scale solar, commercial scale, and community renewables. Again, you can go to our webpage. The link is at the bottom of the slide to get more details on these programs. And you've already heard about direct pay in the federal investment tax credit. A couple of other programs I'd like to mention. Rhode Island was awarded a $49 million Solar for All grant from the EPA back in April. This is subject to final negotiation with the EPA, which we are currently in the process of doing. And the program will expand access to rooftop and community solar in disadvantaged communities in Rhode Island. So stay tuned as we develop our plans for this initiative. Our website does have a webpage dedicated to tracking the progress as we move forward with this program. And we've also launched the Affordable Solar Access Pathways program. We're working with the Renewable Energy Fund from Commerce Rhode Island. And this initiative provides qualifying households in EJ areas access to affordable rooftop solar and energy efficiency services. And it's all through a very innovative solar lease. Posigen is the lease provider that was selected for this program. Next slide, please, Erica. All right, I'm trying to go through this quickly. We have transportation programs that people can take advantage of. Our EV programs has 3 different rebate programs, divisions. One for standard rebates up to 1,500, Drive Plus, which is income qualified, which is an additional 1,500, so it would be up to 3,000. We have e-bike rebates. This program is paused right now, but we expect it to relaunch after July 1st. There are standard rebates and income qualified rebates. And we are also working on the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, which is funded from the Federal Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act. Our phase 1 requirements were to install fast chargers at 2 park and ride locations in Rhode Island, Route 117 in Warwick, and the Ashaway Park and Ride in Hopkinton. We are nearly complete with this with phase 1, and you'll hear some exciting news within the next month about that. And then we're going to move on to phase 2. I don't know if people received a survey a few months ago about phase 2 for NEVI. This initiative is going to be basically a grant program where small businesses, nonprofits will be able to apply for grants to install electric vehicle charging stations on public roads, other publicly accessible locations. Next slide, please. And here is a screenshot of a link to state and federal energy incentives on our webpage. And next slide. And here is my contact information. And that is it. Thank you. Kick it back to Priscilla.
Thank you so much, Karen. OER is offering so much, and we want the Providence community to access as many of those programs and energy and carbon savings as much as possible, including that Solar for All funding that Karen mentioned that OER is being awarded through the historic climate federal funding you will learn more about throughout this webinar. Is really an exciting time to see the amount of funding that is going towards these climate initiatives that will hand in hand help our environment, but also improve the quality of life in Rhode Island, but also offer true economic savings and benefits along the way. So we do have some time for Q&A. A reminder to our to you all, our participants, that you can use the Q&A feature to type in your questions for any of the panelists. Since we ended with Karen as our most recent presenter, I'm going to go ahead and follow up by asking Karen, how best can people keep informed about everything that OER is offering in your programs?
Thank you for asking that question, because I am excited. We're going to launch a new initiative this summer called the OER Roadshow. We are going to partner with elected officials, with cities and towns, with community organizations, and really go out on the road across the state. And we're going to bring the information to residents, small businesses, and nonprofits. If anyone who's attending this webinar today would like to talk to me about hosting one of these roadshows, please hit me up. Happy to do it. And of course, also our website. We always update the website.
That is so exciting, Karen. I have to say, throughout my 15-year history in doing this work, I think it's the first time I've heard of a state agency, and particularly OER, and doing that type of roadshow. So of course, the City of Providence, we're here and ready to continue being a partner and get that information out into our communities. Mike, I'm going to go ahead and pivot over to you because I know you've had some conversation with OER and other partners in the region and across the country, just really thinking about how can the city and other, the City of Providence, other municipalities, as well as the state truly help businesses and nonprofits and residents tap into these investments? In particular, just curious about some of the upcoming technical assistance opportunities or idea that you've referenced along with Karen. So yeah, gonna go ahead and kick it over to you, Mike, if you want to say a little bit more about that, and Karen, feel free to chime in.
So stay tuned for hopefully a couple weeks from now. We are going to be co-hosting with OER and a few others, including our friends at Compete RI, to host an in-person all-day technical session. We intend to do it at a venue that fits a lot of people, with a morning program and then some lunch and then an afternoon program. I think the afternoon program is going to be the most ideally the most exciting piece. We hope to have some tax experts and some technical assistance. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but we hope to make it happen. But we would really, we want to turn this into an event for folks to cross-pollinate ideas of what they could be doing with these rare opportunities, and then turn to some folks that can help them with navigating each of these at the federal level, but also potentially at the state level as well, if they want to pursue those as well. Looking at tying all those and bundling those together to make sure that they're maximizing every dollar and opportunity to benefit their own communities. So stay tuned. We have everyone's email addresses here, so when the details get locked down, you'll be among the first to know.
Great, thank you, Mike. And I will also say, if any of you that are joining us tonight have any ideas for how the city can best get this information out, there's so much information, incentives, rebates, programs that are being offered through the state and through federal funding, climate historic investments like the Inflation Reduction Act. We want you to be able to access that information. We also want to be able to tell you how we're doing that through the city, and where there are opportunities to also for the community to partner with the city and tapping into these resources. So if you have ideas, please reach out. For example, the Smiley administration, we are already looking into offering a bilingual Spanish webinar version of this presentation, and possibly also doing an in-person workshop as well. So if you have other ideas, reach out. When we send you the follow-up information with the recording and resources, all of our contact information will be there as well. And going to take 30 seconds or so to see if we have any other questions that have came in before we go ahead and wrap up. All right, well, since we don't have any other questions, I will go ahead and wrap up the webinar for us. On behalf of Mayor Brett Smiley and the team here at the City of Providence, I want to thank everyone who has joined us virtually during this beautiful sunny evening, and in particular to our friends at Climate Jobs Rhode Island and the Office of Energy Resources for making this webinar possible. We really appreciate your time and your expertise in everything you've covered tonight. And again, please stay tuned for upcoming information about future technical sessions and other resources we want to go ahead and share with you. And with that said, thank you. Thank you again. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.